Hello, and welcome to Learning Well. My name is Elise Markham-Johns, and I'm delighted that you've joined us for today's program. The Integrative Health Education Center at Normandale Community College in Minneapolis, Minnesota produces Learning Well each month. I want to thank them for their continuing support. Each month, we interview authors and leaders in the field of wellness and integrative and holistic health. And today's guest, Guy Finley, just may have made one of the biggest transitions in his life of any previous guests we've had on our Learning Well show. He went from a first career as a Motown songwriter, composing award-winning music for recording artists such as Diana Ross, the Jackson 5, Billy Preston, and the Four Seasons, to an acclaimed author of over 40 books and audio programs in the field of self-development and spiritual psychology. He's regarded as a world-renowned expert at the forefront of human potential, who's helped millions live fuller, more peaceful, and fulfilling lives. Mr. Finley will be joining us shortly to talk about this transition and share his ideas, which cut straight to the heart of our most important personal and social issues: relationships, success, addiction, stress, peace, happiness, and freedom. But first, I'd like to take just a few moments to let you know that the Integrative Health Education Center at Normandale, which is the producer of our Learning Well programs, offers a wide array of classes each session, ranging from hypnosis to homeopathy, yoga, and energy work. And certification is available in more than 12 wellness specialty fields, such as herbalism, aromatherapy, and healing touch. And for those of you who are looking to develop a healing arts business, there are also courses to help you build your health and wellness business. If you'd like more information about classes and programs at Normandale, please do call 952-358-8343, or you can simply email them at normandale.edu/ce/classes. Well, we're delighted to have as our guest today, Guy Finley. Mr. Finley is a self-help writer, philosopher, spiritual teacher, and former professional songwriter and musician, as I mentioned earlier. He is the founder and director of the Life of Learning Foundation, which is a nonprofit center for spiritual discovery, and the acclaimed author of The Secret of Letting Go. His more than 45 other books and audio programs have sold over 2 million copies in 26 languages worldwide. Through the Life of Learning Foundation, Mr. Finley has presented over 5,000 unique self-realization seminars to thousands of grateful students throughout North America and Europe over the past 20 years. He's also been a guest on over 700 television and radio shows, including national appearances on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and NPR. He's a faculty member at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, and 1440 Multiversity in Scotts Valley, California, and is a regular expert contributor to BeliefNet and the Huffington Post. Mr. Finley's career reached this point through a pretty circuitous path. He was born into a successful show business family. He's the son of late night TV and radio pioneer Larry Finley, and his childhood friends were the sons and daughters of the most famous celebrities in the world. As a young man, he enjoyed success in a number of areas, including composing award-winning music, as we mentioned earlier, as well as writing the scores for several motion pictures and TV shows. And from 1970 through 79, he wrote and recorded his own albums under the Motown and RCA recording labels. As a young man, he suspected there was more to life than the type of worldly success that led to the emptiness and frustration that he saw among his own so-called successful friends and colleagues. And in 1979, after travels throughout North America, India, and the Far East, in search of other information and higher wisdom, Guy voluntarily retired from his flourishing music career in order to simplify his life and to concentrate on deeper self-studies. In addition to his writing and appearance schedule, he speaks twice a week on inner life principles at Life of Learning's home in Merlin, Oregon, and these meetings are ongoing and open to the public. Mr. Finley, welcome to Learning Well. We're so delighted to have you with us.
I got exhausted listening to my history.
It is substantial. It certainly is, and fascinating. So
call me Guy, please, Elise.
Oh, I will be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm so curious because after you traveled through North America, India, and the Far East in '79, you made this major life transition, retiring from a very successful career in music to focus on simplifying your life. So I'm just curious, had you been thinking about this change for a while, or were there one or two major events that really precipitated the change? What led you to this?
Just like there's no stream that exists outside of itself, meaning that everything is connected to every vine, there is a branch, and for every branch, there is the continuation of itself. It seems like there were all of these disparate activities, changes in my life, but the truth is, at least they weren't really as disconnected as they sound. From an early age, and I'm talking about the age of 6 or 7 years old, I had an inkling that something was upside down, mistaken, wrong in life. I had no way of understanding it, of course, as a child. But the bottom line is that my whole life was and continues to be a search. I am an individual who wants to have a broader, deeper, consistent relationship with something that doesn't turn into its opposite, that doesn't have fear in it, that doesn't have anger and hatred in it. All the things that I grew up in the midst of a world where you would think, if everybody's got everything they want, how could there possibly be such a disruption in relationships? And there was. And so, again, it seems like it was a circuitous route, but it wasn't. It was just a continual seeking and doing what I had to do in order to continue that search. That's the whole story in a nutshell by the name of Guy.
Well, let's focus first on your most recent book, which is called Relationship Magic: Waking Up Together. What made you decide to tackle this particular subject?
Well, again, it's the continuation of all things. There's no Elise, there's no Guy without relationship. There is no self without relationship. If you think about it, everything about even our conversation and everyone who's listening or watching us at this moment, who am I outside of the impressions and the experience I'm having as I listen to Guy and Elise, or as I look at Elise? I live here in Southern Oregon. I turn the camera around so you could see the mountains and the trees, but Caitlin would have a heart attack if I did. So I mean, every moment is a reciprocation between the observer and the observed. I look out, I see the forest, I have a specific feeling. I know parts of myself that I can't know when I'm looking directly at you, so that every relationship is a revelation. And without revelation, what are we talking about? How do I know who and what I am other than something bringing up these qualities in me? The answer I'm giving you is because of the question you've asked. So I see life as this relationship between every moment bringing up inside of ourselves something that we didn't know was there the moment before, and we're answering life. So to me, that's the great journey. Response to life, responsible response to life. So that's why the book Relationship Magic. Everything is relationship. It is our single greatest resource.
And I'm curious about the part of the title that's after the colon, Waking Up Together. What was your thought in putting that title together?
Well, the truth is, I had a completely different subtitle, and my publisher fought with me, and in the end, I caved. The original subtitle for Relationship Magic was The Endless Journey of Love. That was the real subtitle, and I still prefer it.
I do too.
Yeah, well, they decided that something a little more provocative, because, waking up together sounds like, you open your eyes and someone's under the sheets with you.
Right.
But that was not, and that is not the meaning of the subtitle. The meaning of the subtitle is connected to what I was just telling you. I live here in the mountains. Every morning, the girls are pretty on the clock here. I've hand raised literally a group of deer for 7 generations. And so I get up every morning and I go outside, and every morning is a different relationship with these girls, these deer, my friends. What's going on? Well, they wake up in me something. My enjoyment of the deer is the continual stirring of the part of me that's in natural relationship with a wild creature. When they're gone, for instance, the turkeys just came. The turkeys I don't like. They really make a mess. So I have a totally different experience, but the turkeys wake me up. The deer wake me up. Elise wakes me up. Everything wakes us up. That's the purpose of a relationship, is the awakening of qualities and characteristics in our own consciousness that we're not present to until we're awakened to them by the environment, the people, the problems, the conditions around us.
That's so interesting what you were saying about animals and how they awaken different things in us. I go out walking every other morning, and there is a pair of hawks that are building a nest. And I just so look forward to seeing what their process is at the moment.
Yes.
And I talk to them. I'm glad other people aren't around, because they would really start to wonder. But it's just such a wonderful experience to be able to enjoy something like that.
All right, so you've touched on something pretty important. Is the beauty, the harmony, the depth and breadth of whatever that interaction is that Elise is having with the hawks, and I would be talking to them whether people were watching or not. I could give a, wait a minute, here comes an Al joke. I could give a hoot. You know, or is it in that moment, are the hawks, is the nature of the hawk that stirs the consciousness in Elise, is the nature of the hawk out there in the hawk? Or is there suddenly a kind of marriage between the quality in Elise, the part of her that's capable of experiencing some of those qualities of the nobility, you know, the dignity, the arrogance, whatever it may be in the creature that you're looking at? It's Elise discovering Elise through the world around her. That's what waking up together means. I look out at a night sky, the full moon, the cursed full moon. I don't sleep well during full moons. Everything stirs us, everything. And when it stirs us, we discover within ourselves something we didn't know was there prior to the stirring. So Elise gets stirred by the hawks, and she loves the hawks because it brings up a very loving, very compassionate, very natural feeling in her. Can you see that with me?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Well, and I think it's so interesting when you think about relationships, because one of the things that starts to happen is that we fall into habitual patterns, and many of which do not serve us or the relationship very well. So how do we go about breaking those old recurring patterns that can sometimes be harmful?
Well, it's a pretty deep question, because if there was a simple answer, none of us would be stuck in a pattern. I will tell you something that is true. My wife and I, we've been married 40 years, and not once in our life has we ever raised our voice at each other. Not once in 40 years. And that's because we both work to understand that, and help me if I'm not clear, can a part of a pattern break a pattern, or must there be something outside of the pattern to intervene in the pattern to break it? Do you understand the question? Mm-hmm. Can a pattern break a pattern, or is a pattern the continuation of a certain set of psychological reactions, you know, a certain kind of weaving that's going on? Mustn't something come from outside the pattern to intervene and to reveal, for instance, the patterns going on? When we're in a negative pattern, if we actually knew we were, we wouldn't stay in it. No one deliberately stays in a punishing relationship. Nobody. So part of the pattern on the part of the people involved is they believe that something they're doing again and again and again is actually going to change the pattern, which is, as Einstein said, the definition of insanity, to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So we're not talking about doing the same thing over and over again. We're talking about, where can I begin to understand the nature of this pattern? Because if I don't understand the nature of the pattern, then my present understanding is establishing the pattern. Do you understand? I
Yeah.
need a new idea, quite literally, not an idea that is me getting you to change, because I've got lots of ideas how to make you least different. And I judge myself mercilessly about changing myself, but that's part of the pattern. What's outside of the pattern? And the answer to the question is a new understanding about its nature. Not how do I change the pattern? How do I change the pattern maker?
And it's the other thing that's so difficult in relationships is that we tend to hurt those that we love when it's the last thing in the world that we want to do.
Of course. And no one wants to hurt another human being. But let's talk about this new self-knowledge that I'm saying is required to break the pattern. So you be advocate for listeners. Try to keep this right down to earth. When you, I'll try it the other way. When somebody comes and they are negative towards you, what's the first thing that comes up in Elise when somebody makes a negative comment, a triggering set of words? What's the first thing that happens?
Well, defensiveness.
Exactly. So just like that, the person has come to me. Now, do I know when that person has come to me and they have said or accused me, attacked me in some way? Do I know in that moment that that person is in pain? Or is the only pain I know what appears mechanically when they come towards me? Only pain I know is my pain. It never occurs to me, ever, that the person who said that sarcastic, cutting remark was in pain, or they wouldn't have said it. It's not in the realm of the reaction to what they have said, period. Now, they are in pain. I don't see it. And suddenly I'm in pain. And what do I do with my pain? You said it. I go on the defensive, which is the same way of saying is that I throw the grenade back to the one who threw it to me. They start the war. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to make sure I have the last word. I'm going to make sure they see where they're wrong. And until they see where they're wrong, I'm going to keep throwing the grenades. Am I lying?
No, absolutely. In fact, you're talking about that just brought up a memory of something very strange that happened a number of years ago when it was a very cold winter morning. It had been snowing. I was in Minnesota at the time. It was very cold. And I was driving to work and I was driving over the speed limit. And all of a sudden behind me, of course, I saw the flashing lights, pulled over. It was a state patrol officer. And all I could think of when he came to the window, he was just in his, he didn't have a coat on. He just had his state patrol jacket on. And I looked at him and I said, oh my gosh, you must be so cold. And it must have so thrown him off that I was focusing on him and not being defensive about being pulled over, that I didn't get a ticket. So yeah,
Right.
how often do we think of the pain that other people might be in under those circumstances?
That's what I'm saying. So that person that came and triggered you was triggered by something. And then they come and they're in pain and they don't know what to do with the pain. And so you're an easy target because something about you sets them off. And just like that, they're ready to launch into you. So here's someone in pain. They set me into an immediate set of resistance, defensiveness. I fire back. What do they do when I fire back? They fire back again, and you get escalation. So in order to break the pattern, one of us has to be present enough, self-aware enough to realize that if I respond in unkindness to unkindness, we are guaranteed to create a pattern of unkindness. It can't be otherwise. But if we understand that analogy, then we realize, well, someone, and it's not going to be the person that comes to me, is going to have to take the bullet. Someone's going to have to say, you know what? It stops here. I'm not going to participate in punishing you because of the pain you're already in. I can't do it. By the way, that's called compassion. That's real compassion, not I go and I serve food to homeless people, not I think about myself as being a loving person because I donate $100 to the Ukrainian Defense Fund, but because in the moment where someone's in pain, I don't respond in pain. I bear my own pain for the sake of the person who has revealed it to me. I'm going to say it again. I bear my own discomfort for the sake of the person who has revealed it to me. And in doing so, I'm suddenly made aware of the fact that I am like a machine. You push this button, I go off. Well, you didn't put the button in me. I was born into a world that creates and produces buttons by the truckload. So we come into this life. This is part of what I went through growing up. And I discover I am like this strange thing. Anybody can say anything or they can throw a promise at me. At least my father at one point was the co-CEO of a company that was getting ready to buy 20th Century Fox. I'll never forget this. We were upstairs in the penthouse at the Century Plaza Hotel, and I'm 17, 16 years old, and I'm having a nice time. But my dad's telling me, we're going to do this and we're going to make you an executive this and you're going to get that. And I remember I got in the elevator. I couldn't stop myself. I was bouncing off the walls. I was so excited. I couldn't contain myself. And as I'm bouncing off the walls, I'm thinking, God, guy, what are you, out of your mind? You what's going on? And sure enough, push come to shove, that all fell through the floor. But the bottom line is that why am I not able to be present to what comes flooding out of me instead of being carried away by it? Because if I can be present to what the reaction is bringing up in me, then I can use the reaction as a force of revelation. I can discover something about Guy that I cannot know if I'm a captive of that pattern. So what are the buttons? Most of us have no idea how easily set off we are. So I don't want to spend my life snapping back, getting caught up in anxiety because the world goes this way instead of that way. I want my own life. In all honesty, that's everything that I work at, is what does it take for me to use my relationships to wake up to the parts of me that have been using me to keep me a captive of these patterns.
And Guy, I want to ask you too something that I'm curious what your response would be to this. Do you feel strongly that it's possible to restore a relationship when love has really started to disintegrate a bit? And how do you know if it's worth restoring?
When we first fall in love, it's, oh yeah, you wake up in me stuff I didn't even know I had. And after whatever it is, a week, 2 weeks, 2 years, we go from oh yeah to oh no. And we go to oh no because you're no longer doing for me what you used to do for me. So really, it isn't you that has changed, but the demands that I placed on you are suddenly not being answered by you who didn't even know I had a list to begin with. You understand? Mm-hmm. So that change in the dynamic of a relationship is not because the other person has changed. It's because you're not changing. Now, do I stay with somebody who does not want to go through what is required to have a refreshing, renewed relationship? Or do I, cut bait and go fish someplace else? That's what you're asking. But I think at least we have to ask the question predicated on a new understanding. What makes a relationship fresh? I'm asking you.
Well, I think your own way of looking at things, you're bringing things into it that weren't there previously that maybe you can both enjoy.
Well, yeah, I mean, so, and forgive me if this is, off whatever it is where I shouldn't go, read a book on how to have different kind of sex. Go and plan another honeymoon where you're going to both go and be the exact person who left where you were, create some new stimulus is what you're saying. And what I'm saying is that you don't refreshen a relationship by creating new stimulus. You refreshen a relationship by realizing where it is that you're living with the same demands on your partner. You give them no space at all to grow, because all of us know what it's like. I'm on my tiptoes around my partner when, after 20 years, I know, this is even in the Relationship Magic book. She comes in and catches her husband, who's supposed to be on a diet, with his hand in the cookie jar. Now, she didn't know that the moment before he put his hand in there, that he was thinking, you know what? I made a promise to my wife to lose some weight. I'm not going to do it. But she comes in, and just as he's pulling his hand out, doing what he promised, she catches him with what looks like a crime. She attacks him because now he's not doing what she thinks will change their relationship. He doesn't know what else to do but to start defending himself. And then, just like we've been talking about, he wakes up and he realizes she couldn't be attacking him if she weren't in pain the moment before. If that's true, then he does the last thing that any of us would ever think to do. And this is the story in the book. He says to her, you know what, sweetheart? I'm not going to fight with you. I'm just not going to fight. What, you don't love me? This is where we've come to, by the way. If you don't fight with me, you don't love me. Mother of pearl, do we really think that fighting with someone we love proves that we love them? That's the most insane thing in the world. No, I'm not going to fight with you because I love you. What do you mean you're not going to fight with me because I love you? He said, I'm going to accept, I'm going to pay the tab for this moment. Someone has to agree that the only way this pattern changes is by ending it now. Well, what's going to happen? Don't you see, sweetheart? I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know what happens when we fight. Now, someone has agreed to pay the bill. And in that moment, a completely new dynamic appears in the possibility of that relationship, because someone has agreed to end the pattern that drives it. That's the best I know how to answer that, Elise.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, you've written so many books, and I want to touch on a few of them because I think they can be so valuable to our viewers. And in 2015, you wrote The Secret of Your Immortal Self. And it's rather unique in that it's a series of 80 essays of varying lengths. And I would really love to hear your thoughts on why you decided to put it in this format, and give us also an overview of the book, if you will.
I knew a great man. I worked with him for 15 years, a genius as far as I was concerned, and for whatever it's worth, a true Christian mystic. He was just an enlightened human being. And one time we were talking, and he said to me, it's wise to seek immortality because time defeats all other ambitions. And I'll just never forget the reaction that I had when I heard that, because it's so obvious. There is going to come a point in time where I can't take my books with me, what I've written. I can't take my interviews. I can't take my wife with me. I can't take the deer with me. I got nothing, And I don't know about you, but I've broken every bone in my body. I've had cancer. I mean, I've been through the whole 9 yards of physical challenges. And I can tell you that when you're going through those things, you're realizing that what's really important isn't the things that you have, not even the things you believe in, but what you are. And when you really get the idea that it's what you are that matters, you start understanding that within every last one of us, Elise, aren't we all looking for something that will stay with us through thick and thin, that doesn't turn into its ugly opposite, and that consoles us and comforts us, knowing that we're in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time, regardless the circumstances going on around us. This is what I call in this book, the secret of the immortal self. Is not relate. Okay, sorry. I don't mean to keep going on with certain things, but look, when I go outside and I'm with the deer, I'm in relationship with them, and that relationship is a reciprocity. There is an exchange. When I go out to dinner, when my wife and I went out to dinner last night, we have a favorite Japanese restaurant. We're in a relationship with the waiter there. We're in relationship with the food. There's a reciprocity. When I'm dying, Elise, I'm going to be in relationship with something. As I'm on my deathbed, I am going to be experiencing a certain set of revelations that produce a relationship. Can I use the depth and breadth of relationship to discover something that doesn't die? Because relationship is the basis of life. In the Immortal book, I tell a story. I'm 22 years old now. I'm living in Malibu. I have a beautiful house. I'm doing pretty good in the music business. And I walk into this outdoor market, and there's a man selling, I didn't know what they were. I'd never seen a bonsai tree before in my life. Those are those beautiful little twisted trees. I never saw, and at least God is my witness, I started crying. It was such a powerful, emotive moment looking at these trees. And I thought, what in the name of God's going on? So I went and I spent the whole day there talking to the owner who makes the trees. I bought a couple, I took them home, and I have one of those trees still today. Now, what is that relationship? Why am I drawn to the suffering that a tree that's 150 years old shows in its trunk? All that it's been through. What is so draws me to that? And the answer is that there is something in me that corresponds to the timelessness of that old tree. I look at the majestic mountains. Why? What do I like about that? There's depth and breadth and majesty. Well, is the majesty in the mountain, or is it already a characteristic of my own consciousness? So we're drawn to these relationships because we discover something timeless through them. That's the immortal self, that which is forever realizing itself through the relationships it is in. And they are timeless because the qualities and characteristics revealed through them are timeless. That's why I wrote the book, to try to help people understand that we have something immortal in us. Call it the divine, the living Christ, the Buddha. The words mean nothing to me. What means everything to me is the actual relationship and the experience of it.
That's a delightful story, and you share other stories in the book along with some practical applications. Could you share a few more with us?
Oh my God. Excuse me.
Have I opened a can of worms?
Well, look, is there any story that anyone has ever written that isn't autobiographical? I mean, it's all me trying to share things that I've seen that are true, that until we understand that the truths that we love, that we find in other people, in books, in music, in relationship, that those are all waking up together. You'll see as we go through this conversation, you won't bring up a book that doesn't bring it full circle to this idea of relationship as revelation, revelation as integration, integration as realization. It's all there. I just have to connect the dots. Remember when you were a kid, connect the dots? We just have to connect the dots. Our life is intended to be a school for connecting the dots.
Well, you also in the book write about that some dark unwanted events in our lives are actually gifts to us. And that certainly can seem like a contradictory statement when you're going through it. But can you give us some examples of that and your thoughts on it?
Absolutely. It's one of the most important ideas. You and I agree. Oh yeah, when we fall in love, Oh yeah, when we're out in nature, because that moment of relationship is stirring in us a corresponding quality that we just love experiencing, right?
Absolutely.
Well, why does that break down when I'm standing in front of somebody and instead of an old, beautiful tree, I'm looking at an old, craggy, cranky human being? They are still stirring in me qualities and characteristics I didn't know were in me. See, this is where the rubber meets the road, Elise. I love moments that confirm me because I'm experiencing something I didn't know was true about me. But you bring me a moment I don't want, and I've got nothing in me that wants to admit I couldn't possibly be. How can I know another person's pain, Elise, unless I have the pain in me? It's impossible.
Yeah.
And it's in that discovery. In the Relationship Magic book, I think I tell about a very distinct experience I had when I got cancer. I had 7 operations on my vocal cords in less than 6 months.
Wow.
Because they couldn't get clear margins. And with each successive surgery, it was like hell. Because I'm not going to go into details, but it was more and more painful, and I couldn't bear it. And the last operation, I'm lying on the recovery room, and I can already feel the pain. I know what's going on. I'm not one for self-pity, but I started to cry out of self-pity for myself, which really hurt my throat, by the way. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't. And I also think like Guy can go through stuff. I'm thinking, I can't do this again. I cannot do this again. And as I'm doing them, I tilt my head over, and then in the same recovery room, the drapes are drawn back. There's an older woman, much older, and she's sitting with her husband. They've got to be in their 70s, 80s, and he's holding her hand and he's stroking it. And I look it over and I see, God help me, that she must have had some kind of cancer of the jaw because her face is kind of caved in, the bandage there. And Elise, in that moment, it was an act of God, as far as I'm concerned. My pain disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely disappeared. I felt such compassion for this woman. Not my compassion. Sweet God, please understand me. Nothing to do with Guy. Something in him. I actually got up off of the bed in one of those sheets, where 4 winds are flapping in the back, and stumbled over to this couple and managed to whisper. I still don't know how it happened. I said, everything's going to be all right. The nurse came and got me because I almost fell over. That sudden realization to me was exactly the story of the Good Samaritan in retrospect. Why did no one stop and help this man who was beaten on the road? Because no one felt his pain. No one understood that their resistance to helping is because they don't want to experience the pain of the man that they stopped to help. And we're created to do that. That's immortal in us. That is the Christ in us. That is the divine in us. Call it what you will. It acts, it speaks, it responds. So the immortal self, waking up together, relationship magic, all of this is about how do we get into touch with something that is always touching us, but we're so far out of reach because we're always avoiding or blaming situations that bring up in us what you just said. Why would I avoid something that can educate me? Elise, I know you know this. When the student is ready, what happens?
The teacher appears.
Oh my, but I only want certain teachers. How about you?
Right. I want to be able to pick the ones I want.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's nonsense. Because the teacher is the moment of revelation where you and I are required by a great reconciling divine intelligence to bring about a reunity, to restore what is not in balance in us. The teacher just comes to say, hey, Guy, take a look at this. And I go, I love looking at that. I don't like looking at that. I have to learn to love to look at everything.
You know, one of the other things that's so prominent for all of us is dealing with fear, especially the past couple of years. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
And you feel that most of our fears, if not all of them, are born of what you term false beliefs. What are some of those false beliefs that hold us back, and how do we move past those?
Let's tie it into relationship magic. I believe that you are supposed to, at all times, put my concerns in front of your own.
Mm.
That's my belief. Now, people out there go, oh, I'm not like me. Oh, yeah, just like you. How do we know? Because the split second that the waiter doesn't come to my table on roller skates as fast as he can, the split second my wife doesn't ask me, how do I feel, before I ask her, whatever it may be, there's a reaction. That's a false belief. How about this? I believe that unless Elise likes me, I'm a failure. I believe unless the world confirms me the way I want to be confirmed, I'm no good. We're taught that growing up, to believe that our sense of value is dependent upon others confirming it. That is a false belief that drives us into endless compromising ourselves so that we can win the approval of people that don't even approve of themselves.
Mm.
We need to see this, because these false beliefs drive fear. Fear drives false choices. False choices deliver false response, and we're in the pattern that we talked about before. See how full circle all of this is?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And along with that fear comes, always a flood of negative thoughts. And you write that it's possible to rise above those negative thoughts. Now, when we're in the midst of that, it's hard to believe that that's possible, frankly.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
But what do you have some strategies you can recommend?
See, what we want to do is we want to have a spiritual McDonald's. we want to drive through, talk to the box, not really interact with somebody, text in advance that we're coming, and please have compassion, friendliness, love, self-sacrifice, have all these things in my happy meal when I drive through, so that I go eat them and be a changed person. That's absolute nonsense. What did the man in our story do when his wife in pain came and began that pattern? How did he interrupt the pattern and give his wife space to see the space she was in? Because when I push back, you can't see the space you're in. All you see is you got to push back. What did he do? He said,
yeah,
this one's on me. I'm not going to fight.
yeah.
I'm going to be responsible for my own pain. I'm not going to hold you responsible for it. I'm going to be responsible for it myself. This is the big thing. Elise, I know you are an educator. Tell me something. Do you know, and I mean this somewhat, do you know the original meaning of the word patience?
No.
It's stunning. It means to suffer yourself. Isn't that beautiful?
Surprising.
Isn't that surprising? That's why St. Paul said, in your patience possess you your soul. Suddenly, oh my God, patience, suffer myself. Wait a minute. No, I want to blame you for my suffering. No, you are not responsible for my suffering. You, as far as I'm concerned, and God help us to help this be true, you're an agent of the divine come to show me that I'm walking around with all this preloaded nonsense that can't wait to be triggered. And then in that suffering, find someone to blame for the pain, because I'm always innocent. I'm never the one that causes a problem. Are you kidding me? You should all be like me. See, that's where it's got to stop. Because if it does, then I can begin to practice patience. I have an exercise for it. You want to hear it?
Sure.
One of my favorite exercises. It's called stop, drop, and endure. Stop, drop, and endure. My wife, my kids, the guy on the freeway, he comes roaring by. Now I want to speed. And what really irritates me is that he's doing it. I want to do the curb sneak, but really irritates me is that someone actually does it. They're not as civil as I am. So here's the point. I have a reaction, right? We know the reaction's part of a pattern, right? Stop. How do I stop? I have to wake up and realize I'm about to step into this flood of thoughts and feelings, and I can't do it. I can't do it if I want to break the pattern. Stop. Okay, stop. Drop. Well, what am I going to drop? If I actually wake up in the spot and I decide instead of being carried by the pattern, I'm going to be the observer of it, then in that split second, I have a chance to observe all of the thoughts and feelings that have come to carry me with them through that pattern. I sit there and I drop them. I say, wait a minute, what's this hatred? I didn't know. Whoa, wow. Drop all of it. Stay with the witnessing, with the observation of that part of ourselves. And then I guess you can guess the last part, right? Endure. What am I enduring? The idiot that drove by me, the inconsiderate person, or am I enduring my own consciousness?
Mm-hmm.
Ah, yeah. See,
Wow.
yeah. See, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die, Elise.
How true.
Yeah.
Well, your very first book was The Secret of Letting Go. And so what propelled you into writing that book particularly?
Well, we've come full circle, haven't we? Because isn't everything we're talking about sort of the alpha and the omega all tied together in one thing? The whole life is a great big lesson in letting go. Not about getting hold of stuff, but discovering over and over again that, for instance, the false belief that I am as socially valuable as the possessions I have. We feel that. But the problem with being as valuable as my possessions is that the conditions that originally allowed me to come into those possessions change. And when they change, suddenly I'm no longer valuable because now I'm full of fear for losing what I had become identified with. In the end, all acts of letting go are not letting go of him, her, this, or that. It is an inside job. It is the discovery that my pain is because I have become identified. Who and what I think I am depends on something outside of me. And there is no such true lasting relationship. What lasts in it is the lashing that comes every time something changes that wasn't part of my menu.
And we're all so haunted by the past, past mistakes we've made, past regrets that we have, missed opportunities in our life. Why is it so difficult to let go of all that?
See, look, here's somebody. How can I make a quick story for you? You know the old story, the man goes to the doctor and he says, I've got this massive headache, doc. Every time I hit my head with a hammer, I get a headache. And the doctor says, well, let me think about it. Oh, I know. Stop hitting yourself with the hammer. Where is the pain of the past, Elise? Is it in the past? Or is it in the fact that something in me takes me back to that moment and revisits the scene of the crime so that I can cry again over something that doesn't exist outside of something in me that wants to remember it again? See, we always want something to blame for our pain. We are created with the capacity to awaken sufficiently enough to realize, why is there something in me that keeps telling me I need to revisit how you betrayed me, how you abused me? Did you do it? Yes. Oh, by the way, because you were in pain and I didn't know it. So I'm not going to blame you for the pain you were in. I may not be able to forgive you yet because I haven't discovered the true source of forgiveness, but I do know that the only time I'm in this kind of pain is when something in me picks me up, drops me back off into that memory, and then I re-experience myself and blame you for re-experiencing me again.
Wow. I guess what comes to my mind, so is all of this built into us? I mean, is there any way, none of us escapes any of this, do we? I guess that would be my, or is it more a process of what we experience as we grow up?
This is a great question. We have to recognize that learning is not about becoming. When we say we've learned, we get hold of an idea that says, well, next time I won't be like this because I can imagine who I will be, what I will do. Learning is instantaneously letting go of what produced the moment you don't want. It is the awareness of it. So that you cannot separate learning from awareness of self. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. If the student actually learns the lesson, he doesn't have to repeat it. The reason we repeat lessons, run in these patterns, have the pain with our partner, is because we're not learning the lesson in the moment. Something in us is deflecting it. We are brought into a world and we are immersed in a consciousness that only knows how to deflect anything that doesn't reflect the way it sees itself. We must learn to see through that consciousness and begin to accept the revelation. If I accept the revelation, I'm no longer fighting with my own consciousness. Can you imagine a human being spending their entire existence fighting to prove that they are not what they just did? That's such a rudimentary conflict, but we don't see it, Elise. But by the grace of God, we can see it. How? I begin to realize, you know what? I really need to experience this moment differently. Well, how am I going to do that? I can't do it if I'm in a series of reactions. But if I'm watching all of that while I'm going through all of this, then I'm realizing something about this consciousness. It is the consciousness becoming aware of itself that is the escape. But it's not really an escape. It is an immersion and an integration so that we become fully integrated human beings into this consciousness that is not Elisa's, that is not Guy's, it isn't Caitlin's, it is our consciousness. It is our pain. It is our fear. When we get an inkling of that, we can begin to meet moments with a willingness to let them teach us what they have come to teach us.
We've covered a lot of ground, but we have a lot we still would love to cover. At least I would love to cover, and I know our audience would too, but we are quickly running out of time, unfortunately. Before we conclude, how can our audience find out more about your work and some of the resources that are available to them? You and I have had some nice time here. We've acknowledged together some ideas, yeah. So can I act knowledge? Can I turn the knowledge into action? That's the key. So if a person wants to learn how to turn the knowledge into action, they can look me up. I speak online twice a week for free all around the world. You go to guyfinley.org/classes or /letgo, or just go to guyfinley.org. You can search me up on the net and join me. There's nothing to join, absolutely nothing, completely free. Replays, the whole 9 yards. Let's learn together. Pure and simple. If you go to my website, guyfinley.org, you can get a free book, the Freedom from the Ties That Bind, just for signing up to get the weekly meditations. Nothing to join, just wanting people to be able to discover what they can, to be delivered from what we've talked about. That's it. Guy, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. So appreciate your being with us today.
It did go pretty quick.
It did.
Sorry if I was so long-winded, but I try to get all of it packed into one
packed
place.
In a lot, and we appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
Okay, Lise, thank you so much.
Yes, and I just want to tell our audience a little bit about some upcoming guests before we conclude today. Next month, our guest will be Florence Williams, who's author of the book Heartbreak, A Personal and Scientific Journey. And some of our other important upcoming guests include Robert Maurer, who's author of One Small Step Can Change Your Life. He will be with us in May. And Pam Grout, author of E Squared, Do-It-Yourself Energy Experiments, that prove your thoughts create your reality, and the Course in Miracles experiment. She will be joining us in July. And I also want to let all of our audience know that Learning Well programs are archived. So it's possible to go back to Normandale Community College Learning Well on the web and simply look at the archive programs and take a look at some other guests that you might want to listen to. So we hope you might do that as well. And we also hope that if you enjoyed the show, we hope you will let at least one other person know about our conversations on Learning Well. So in closing, I want to thank our guest, Guy Finley, and the Integrative Health Education Center at Normandale for producing our monthly edition of Learning Well. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us today. We appreciate your taking the time to be with us and would greatly appreciate your feedback on our Learning Well show, as well as your suggestions for future guests. So please feel free to get in touch with us at the Integrative Health Education Center at Normandale with your thoughts. And please join us next month for our conversation with author Florence Williams, who will share her own personal journey of overcoming heartbreak, as well as the science behind heartbreak. Until then, stay well.